So I think that Lincoln Riley at this point, just for the time being, can take the back seat to being the most hated man in the SEC because Matt Rhule at Big Ten Media Days decided to step in front of the microphone and say, I think we should get 4 teams in the college football playoff every year because this is the best league. Now, naturally, people read a headline and they started running rampant with it, but in the SEC, we also know that logically makes zero sense. Regardless of what forming opinion you have with it, it actually makes zero sense. So let's go and discuss what's going on SEC Unfiltered. It's Cole Thompson here. Make sure that you like the video. Hit the ring notification down below because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. You want to yell at me? At Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter, and to keep up with the #1 content surrounding your favorite team, visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode's brought to you by RHOBACK. Use promo code SECU for 20% off all joggers, polos, hoodies, shorts, much, much more. Look good, feel good this upcoming fall at RHOBACK.com with the promo code SECU. So, people saw a headline and they ran with it. And this is where immediately I'm not going to take your opinion seriously if you don't read the article. But don't worry, I'll do it for you. So, this was the legit quote from Matt Rhule in Indianapolis. I think we'll have a lot of access to the college football playoff. I think 4 teams from this league should get in every year because this is the best league. This is the NFL of college football in my mind. It stretches from coast to coast, different time zones, different weathers. That does not diminish any other conference. The SEC is amazing. These other leagues are great, but the challenges in the Big Ten are going to be difficult, travel, weather, and great teams. So naturally, when it comes to the NFL version, he's not entirely wrong. When you look at Greg Sankey, he has made it abundantly clear. We are keeping things in the Southern region. It is all in the SEC. We're not going coast to coast to get teams to buy in for our media rights deals and for our money purposes. We're not going to pull an ACC. We're not going to pull a Big Ten. We're not going to pull a Big 12. So in that sense, yes, he is right. He also is right when it comes to the time zones, the different weathers. You are not going to see the same type of atmosphere in Eugene, Oregon that you will see in Piscataway, New Jersey in December. You will not see State College, Pennsylvania have the same weather and temperament as Los Angeles, California in mid-October. That's just a fact. Those are straight up facts. But outside of that, there is no factual information to say this is the best conference. And I'm not even going to go with the low blow because if it's easy just to say, well, you look at the college football playoff over the last decade, you had 2 wins. The SEC has 6 wins and the ACC has 2. You can just say that. And that's all we have to go with. But I want to step further because if I just want to be clear, even though that we are seeing progress and movement forward in the Big Ten, we are seeing it in the SEC as well. And so let's go ahead and pull up the stat line, shall we? I went deep into this research, even in a 12-team playoff, which, by the way, in a 14 playoff, the SEC had 12 opponents. The Big Ten had 9. The SEC would have had 29 different foes make it to the CFP in a 12-team playoff over the last decade. The Big Ten also would have had 29. Now, here's another difference between them. In the SEC, you would have had your usual suspects, the LSUs, the Alabamas, the Georgias, but you also would have snuck in a few other programs like Tennessee, like Texas A&M, like Florida, and actually even Auburn one year. Now, in the Big Ten, you would have had 5 teams go. You would have had Michigan State still make it, Ohio State still make it, Michigan still make it, and you would have thrown in a Penn State, Wisconsin. But that's it. So more representation for the SEC. Now that's a low blow. I went even deeper. Recruiting rankings since 2014, the start of the college football playoff era. The SEC has had the #1 class every single year. Every single year. But they've also had 48 top 10 classes, and the Big Ten has had 19, 6 of which are combined for Penn State and Michigan. Now, what's funny about that is that Notre Dame has 4. So Notre Dame is an independent, has almost as many #1 top 10 recruiting classes as the 2 schools combined in the last decade. In fact, the Big 12 is closer to the Big Ten than the Big Ten is closer to the SEC for #1 rankings. Let's go a step further, shall we? #1 overall draft picks, or first-round draft picks, my apologies. Since 2015, when the SEC and the Big Ten decided to go about being the best conference for winning college football playoffs, The Big Ten has sent a grand total of 59 first-round picks to the draft on Thursday night. The SEC has sent 105, during which they've also had the most number one overall picks. In fact, they've had more number one overall picks than the ACC, and the Big 12 have had more number one overall picks than the Big 10, because the Big 10 in the last decade has not had a number one overall pick. Let's go a step further. Weeks in the number one ranking of the AP poll, which again, completely different than the SEC and than the college football playoff poll, but still very promising when it comes to it. The SEC has had the number one spot in the AP poll 113 weeks. The ACC comes in second at 29, all of which are either been Florida State or Clemson. And of course, the Big Ten pulls up the rear at 12 with two teams. And also twice, those teams were ranked number one for less than 4 weeks during a season. That's where you're at when it comes to number one rankings. But if that's not enough to go ahead and justify my stance of where I stand, let's go ahead and talk about top 25 matchups, the pathway to the postseason for the college football playoff. In the SEC, if you include conference championship weekend, the SEC since 2014 has had a grand total of 108 matchups of top 25 teams versus top 25 teams. The Big Ten has had 68. In strength of record, the conference has a winning percentage over the last 10 years of 60%, 59.98 if you really want to get critical. The Big Ten has had a 56.1 winning percentage over the last 10 years. And if you really want to get critical, the strength of record and strength of schedule, the SEC has ranked number one in both spots at least 5 times. The Big Ten has ranked it twice. So those are just facts that I'm throwing out there. In every sense of the word, minus the college football playoff expanded edition, 12 teams, the Big Ten has come in second place or third place even to the SEC. And I know what people are going to say, but let's talk about the future of the Big Ten. Let's talk about the future about what's coming in. We know that Luke Fickell is going to turn Madison around and the Badgers are going to be booming in Wisconsin. We know that Oregon's not going to be dying anytime soon. Dan Lanning just brought in another 5-star. Lo and behold, I'm going to get off this video, and he probably landed the number one overall class for 2026. We know that Ohio State's not going anywhere. We know that Michigan is still going to be Michigan. I am a big believer in Jonathan Smith for what he did in Corvallis that's needed in East Lansing at Michigan State. You know that Penn State's going to stick around, and there's going to be a team or two that comes out of nowhere every few years. And so you can make a case that, yes, with those teams added in, USC not going away, Washington not going away, Oregon staying a part of it, they're going to have a case for 4 teams in the CFP. But if we're going to go ahead and do that, well, why are we not going to make the same case for Missouri? Missouri right now is coming off its best season. They feel like a top 10 team going into this year. And more importantly, they have a roster that is formidable enough to make waves. What about Ole Miss? Ole Miss is following the last dance mantra this year. And also, as long as they have Lane Kiffin, the portal is going to be popping. You look at Florida, potentially they could turn it around the way that we know that they should. You look at maybe a team like Tennessee, they're on the precipice of finally being one of the contenders. Alabama's not going away. LSU's not going away. Texas and Oklahoma are joining the party. You can't throw out Georgia, who might be the number one team. So the argument goes to 4 teams from the Big Ten. Well, that's fine. So long as 4 teams, if not more, in fact, I would say probably 6, come from the SEC. But that's not fair, Cole. That's not fair. But the numbers say it is. The numbers back it up. So I'm not here to go ahead and crap on Matt Rhule, because if I actually believe what he's saying is true, and naturally you're not going to go out of your way to praise the Big Ten, praise a Big Ten rival on national television. You're not going to do that. I get the game. I get the notion. I get the understanding behind it. But you're really going to sit here with a straight face as fans around college football, people that work in this industry, and say, I can see a path where he makes sense. Yeah, he makes sense for 4 teams if the SEC has 6. Because there's no justification over the last decade. And by the way, I also did the math when you threw in the 4 teams that are joining the Big 12, Big 10, and the 2 teams that are joining the SEC. Guys, it's much worse. It's much worse for the Big 10 when you throw in those squads in the SEC. It doesn't help your case. In fact, it hurts it. There's no justification behind any of this that says, yeah, 4 teams from the Big 10, 4 teams from the SEC, fair is fair. No, fair is the best teams, the best dozen make it into the college football playoff year in and year out. There are no logical first round bids outside of the teams that win their conference. There are no automatic qualifiers that get you into the CFP. And I stand my business for both sides. I'm going to keep this fair and down the middle. I'm a Libra. I'm scales. It's balanced. The SEC should not be guaranteed to have 6 teams in every year. But just when you look at the numbers, the backing, the history, and also the metrics that go into the study, I literally just listed every answer for you. The SEC reigns supreme in every single category over the Big Ten. Every single one. And you're going to tell me that with a straight face, you believe it. I understand where Matt Rhule comes from. I understand that also when we talk about the future of college football, we don't want to have it be all just 2 conferences gunning for the top. But when you say something like that, you're actually hurting the case for everyone else out there. Right now, until further notice, the SEC reigns supreme. And it's not just because of national championships. It's because strength of schedule, strength of record, conference matchups, top 25 matchups, number 1 overall picks, recruiting rankings, first round picks, and of course, national titles. There is no case in sense of the word where the Big Ten should get the exact same amount of teams as the SEC, unless you want to hand out a participation trophy for having a 12-team playoff in the first place. But let me know in the comment section down below. Did I cook the SEC? Did I cook the Big Ten? Did I make a case to where you actually agree with me that this is the most illogical comment made, even with factual representation? Make sure that also you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show. Make sure that also you check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. I'm Cole Thompson. Until next time, folks. Later.